What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Fall Obsession podcast. My name is Sam. I'm your show host over here. Thank you for tuning in. This week, I'm joined by a returning guest to our show. He's been on with me several times, and if you guys are a returning listener, you might recognize him or the name, and that is Mike Behrens. Mike is local to me here in North Texas, very local, as in same neighborhood, and he's got a little chunk of land behind his house that he hunts on and has learned to hunt on. He's an adult onset hunter and has a very unique and interesting journey into hunting in the outdoors. And if you guys have listened to Mike's episodes, you know that Mike is opinionated, and it's a good thing he is. He has some good stuff to say, but he doesn't hold back. And he's got a lot of interesting stuff to share with us in this podcast episode, not just relevant to hunting, but relevant to some personal lifestyle changes that he's made to better himself. And my hope by him sharing that on this show is that it can be an encouragement or a benefit of some kind to maybe somebody out there listening who might be looking to make some changes in their own life. So it's a great story and a great time talking this evening with Mike Behrens, and I hope that this conversation is inspirational to somebody and again makes that difference in someone's life. So before we head on over to the episode, got to hit a few things real quick just with the partners who keep things going over here at Fall Obsession for us. The first one being Hoot Camo. I've been rocking Hoot Camo gear on all of my hunts for the past couple of seasons now, and I am super pleased with it, guys. I absolutely love the gear. It holds up well against the elements and the conditions in various environments. The pattern is extremely versatile. I've worn it in Texas, Colorado, Idaho, and have yet to have a bad experience with my Hoot gear. Absolutely love it. Going to keep wearing it, and you guys should too. So go on over to hootcamo.com, start shopping today, and use the code FALLOBSESSION15 at checkout, and that's going to save you guys some money. Again, it's hootcamo and hootcamo.com. Go check them out. Trophy Edits is another Fall Obsession partner, and they have a discount code for you guys also. It's Fall Obsession, all one word, lowercase letters, and that's going to save you guys some money with them. Think of Trophy Edits like your next step in digital taxidermy. We all have mounts on our wall that tell a story. Maybe they represent a significant moment in the woods that you had with, a family member, a friend, or a loved one. And pictures can do the same thing. Folks have used pictures for the same thing, and you want those pictures, if they're hanging on the wall, to look the absolute best they possibly can, and that's what the Trophy Edits team does. They clean those pictures up, they make them look great, and you can even order the prints and the physical copies to go on the wall directly from them if you'd like. So again, the code is Fall Obsession. Go to the link in this podcast description. That will take you over there, and you guys need to check out Trophy Edits. Bear River Archery is the official bow shop of Fall Obsession. They are local to us here in the North Texas area in Van Alstyne, Texas. If you guys are within driving distance of there, you need to go check them out. We actually just got back from going to the shop, shooting some bows, shooting on the range, recording a podcast in the bow shop with Justin, their owner, and that's going to be next week's podcast episode. You guys don't want to miss that. But they have a great operation going on over there. The range is spectacular. He'll take good care of you. You guys head on over, check out Bear River Archery, and let them know that Fall Obsession sent you. The Outdoor Call radio app is a podcast partner. Outdoors Dan from Respect the Game TV, he created an app that you can download on any device where you can stream hunting shows and podcasts on a loop every single day. Fall Obsession podcast is on that loop on Mondays, same day as our new episodes, and tons of other hunting shows and podcasts that we all know and love. Go download the app today. It's free. You can start streaming right away. And be sure that you follow Outdoors Dan on social media and the Outdoor Call radio app, because they do some live radio shows throughout the week, and those broadcasts are on their social media platforms. Again, the Outdoor Call radio app. Go download it today. Finally, thank you guys again for tuning in to another Fall Obsession podcast. If you haven't already, wherever you are streaming this episode from, be sure that you hit that follow or subscribe button, whatever they have up there for you. Turn your notifications on if that's an option. That way you know every time we drop a new episode or new content. Again, new podcasts coming every single Monday morning, and the podcast videos go to the YouTube channel on Thursdays. If you guys aren't subscribed to the YouTube, now's the time, because we have a ton of stuff coming down the pipe. At the time this episode's coming out, I don't know if our feature-length elk hunting film from the Idaho trip this year is actually going to be on the YouTube yet or not. If it's not, it's coming very soon. Be sure that you guys head on over there and subscribe so that you see all the new videos that are fixing to drop. The website is fallobsession.com. All of our content filters through there. Our shows, our films, our educational articles, our gear reviews, all of it. You guys can stream directly from the website if you wish. Go on over there, explore, see what we got going on. Pick up a hat or a shirt if you'd like. We've got some cool designs on there. And head on over to our social media platforms. We post daily on those with frequent updates from our content creators across the country who are doing hard work and producing some awesome stuff for you guys to see through our Fall Obsession pages. So be sure that you go follow us on social media. And finally, if you are not streaming our shows on Carbon TV, you need to be. Carbon TV is like Netflix for hunting, except it's free. And you guys can stream hunting shows, podcasts, films from hundreds of different creators in the industry all day long, 7 days a week if you want to. So we have 4 different shows on Carbon. This podcast, our staff-inspired video podcast series called Couch Chats is on there, as well as our 2 different hunting shows titled Texas Dirt and Midwest Mindset. Guys, go download the Carbon TV app or put it on your smart TV or even just pull it up in the browser on your computer or whatever and start streaming today. All right, everyone. Thanks for hanging with me through the intro. We're going over to our conversation with Mike. You guys are listening to another Fall Obsession podcast.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down. Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
I was going to do that one. Oh, no, never mind. I already got it, the sight light.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah?
Irma Gerd. Who knew? Like
Life changer.
Oh, my God. Because, I mean, I remember going out there a couple times with the bow. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to shoot something at night. It's going to be great. Can you hear piggy, right? No.
Not so much.
I can't see a dang thing with that. I mean, it was just like green illumination and then nothing. Couldn't see anything, had no target reference whatsoever. I mean, there was just nothing there. And I'm like, dude, I thought these were glow in the dark. Because I'm used to pistol sights. You know, the night sights, they're glow in the dark. You know, they charge up and then they stay lit. So I was like, well, I guess I need a sight light. And I didn't even know if that was a thing.
Yeah.
So I was like trying to figure out ways to take these little LEDs and like turn them on and tape them to it or something like that. Like I was going to
just jimmy rig.
Yeah. And then I just happened to, you know, because I have an HHA sight. So I was like, well, let's see if they have one. And sure enough, boom, the blue burst. I was like, well, that's cool. Yeah. And then I'm reading down and it's like fits every sight except for the 3000 series or something, which I don't have. So I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So I get it. And of course, you know, Jeff Bezos has a better price on it than even HHA does. So of course, bought it from Jeff. My name is Jeff.
I am Jeff.
So I get it from Jeff and it shows up and it was $4 cheaper and fits perfect. And the reviews, I am still convinced that everybody who gives products a 1-star review on jeffazon.com is a complete moron and they just don't know how to use what they're getting.
Yeah.
Like I've seen it so many times. Like, oh man, this is terrible. It just doesn't fit in there. I'm like, so use the thread locker. It's not hard.
Yeah, it's not hard to do it yourself. Completely irrelevant to hunting, but I just got new headlights for my truck, and I ordered them from jeff.com as well. And, you know, kind of took a gamble on it because I'm trying to find some reviews to back it up. And, you know, just looking at the bad ones that were on there, I'm like, man, you had to have had just a bad experience or done something wrong yourself. But they showed up and the instructions were far less than helpful as per the usual. And it turns out like the wiring harnesses for each side, there's a left and a right, but they're not labeled. And if you plug the wrong one in the wrong side, it doesn't work. And there was some guy that was on those reviews that was complaining about how, man, I had to send them back because just plugged them in and I couldn't get them to work. I was like, well, unfortunately, maybe you should have swapped your harnesses. I figured that out, and I was just trying to troubleshoot, like, well, just thinking of any possibility, because I put them in apparently the wrong way. Yeah, there's a left and a right, and they're not labeled, so that's
how
fun.
it works.
Sometimes you got to be able to troubleshoot a little bit.
Well, and it goes back to that almost every single time. I'm like, anytime I get something from, if it's not like a T-shirt or whatever, the only thing I'm concerned about is like I look at the pictures on clothes, and I try to figure out if like somebody's relatively the same size as me, and it's like, okay, that doesn't look awful, or that's not an XL. That's wish.com XL. So I'm gonna need like a 15X or something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's that. But yeah, when it came to the sight light, everybody's like, oh man, this doesn't fit in there. It's really loose and blah, blah, blah. And it's like all kinds of complaints about the fit. And I was like, it's a light that's 1 inch tall.
Yeah.
And it's threaded. It's not that hard. If it's loose, get some pipe dope for it or something. I mean, if you don't want to put thread locker on it, they have pipe dope. It's plumbing stuff. I mean, yeah, it's going to cost you a couple bucks, but it's a $34 light.
There's a solution. Now, from the nitpicky archery side of me, I can understand, like, hey, if this product is designed to go with this product by the same manufacturer, it should fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do stand by that to a point. But on the flip side, sometimes you just have to be able to figure it out too. There's a balance.
I had intended on putting that thread tape on there anyway, just to tighten it up regardless. Yeah. I didn't have to. It locked in tight. It doesn't move, period.
Well, if you ever bow hunt other states, be ready to rip that thing out of there. Because I didn't think about that when I went up to Colorado on my mule deer hunt, and I'm there getting my bow dialed in camp, before we go hunting, and Tim's up there. He's like, hey, you got to take that off. Like, legally, as a bow hunter up here, you can't have that on your bow. And I was like, oh, well, okay. Guess where it is? No idea. Lost it. No idea what happened. It vanished.
It's in a pocket somewhere.
It's in a pocket somewhere, or it's in a field up there in Colorado.
Yeah, I just, like, in perfect example of that, I cleaned out the ground blind before I rotated it and everything, and totally forgot where I put the brass, because when me and Tyler went pig hunting that night and everything, he's got 30-30 brass, and he's got I think he reloads, or somebody he knows reloads or something. So I was going to pick up the brass and everything because we were busy looking for pigs we never found, and I was like, man, where did I put that? Because I had my 50 brass, I had his 30-30 brass, and then there was the 2 pieces of brass from, one from Carrie's deer and one from the other one. So, and I was like, man, where did I put that? Because all those I reload. And then I'm looking today for something, which I never found either. And I moved one of the camo coats. Sure enough, jing, 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 jing. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Found the brass. Cool. Now where's my pullover camo thing that I was going to wear tonight instead of the shirt? Whatever. So I'm looking all over, and yeah, I always got to find a good one for these.
You've had some real. We'll have to do like a little reel or something of all of Mike's costumes for the podcast, because
had a few.
Yeah,
had a few. I didn't get number 1 this year, so I'll have to put that whole idea on hold.
Yeah, there will be another time for sure. But and that, I guess I'll dive in. We kind of had a little soft opening there for everybody, which we've done a couple episodes like that now. It's kind of cool, but yeah, I'm here recording in person down here in Texas. Our guest is Mike Behrens this week. Back on the show. I think this is I want to say number 8. I think this is the 8th one you've done with me.
It's up there.
Something like that. The last one we did was episode 198, and that was the one over, I think it's titled Regulations, Bans, and Ethics.
The piggy one.
Yeah, we talked about the piggy situation in Kentucky.
And the mountain lions here.
Mountain lion, the trapping regulation that came down the pipe here. Talked about some other bobcats and some other random stuff like we always do, but yeah, I guess we're going for another camo episode. We're going for a sleeper that's just going to really hit the algorithms and strike our listeners and tug on their heartstrings a little bit, rise up in the rankings a little bit.
Yeah, well, this was the year for it.
Yeah. So folks that have been trailing with us for a while, they've heard you on here before. They know your adventures. To recap you're an adult onset hunter.
Mm-hmm.
You've dove in. That's not even a word. You went full-fledged into this whitetail thing a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, and just went full send on your own little piece out
and a
there.
deer lease, and having no idea what a deer lease actually was.
Yeah, and you had a deer lease. This was your first year without the deer lease?
No, I only had the deer lease 1 year.
1 year. So last year you didn't have it either?
No.
Okay, I couldn't remember if this was.
Well, not that one. It was, we basically traded. So, I take one at that other place, and then he takes one here. So.
Yeah. But this year, I would say full send out back in the backyard, basically.
Mm-hmm. Tried to.
You tried to, yeah. What was different this year than previous years?
It felt forced.
Felt forced.
Yeah, with everything going on. I mean, there was a lot of things going on in the backstory for the last couple of years, and it got to the point this year where hunting wasn't hunting anymore. Hunting was a job. It was something that I had to do. It's like, okay, I'm gonna put my crap on and go out there.
Here I go again.
Yeah. So it wasn't fun this year, and that bothered me a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that shouldn't be fun. If you don't enjoy doing something, then what are you doing it for? It's not like I'm getting a paycheck from it.
Right. I'm not either, for the record.
Nobody really likes going to their job, with the exception of, like, you guys have fun at your job, obviously.
It's a pretty cool job.
Yeah. I can't say the same.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy going to my job. I do it because, I like puzzles. If anybody does jigsaw puzzles and you get off on those 1,000-piece puzzles that you figure out and you finally get it all put together, that's 8 hours a day for me.
What do you do? So that for people that don't know,
I am a dispatcher for one of the Class 1 railroads, and no free ads. So
fair enough. You got to pay to sponsor this show.
That's right. That's right. Now they do have familiar colors, as far as hunting goes.
Might be on the wall.
There's a certain color that hunters are required to wear, so you can do the math on that one and figure out which one I work for. But so I go in there, and it's a job. It's not something that you wake up. I take that back. Kids kind of do wake up and they want to be like a firefighter. They see a train and they're like, "Oh man, I want to drive a train. That looks really cool." It is for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it's not. So
yeah.
Ask any engineer, guy next door.
Yeah. It's a job. Like all of it.
It is. And there's some days where you go in there and you're like, man, that was a good one. But those days, after doing it for over a decade, those days are fewer and further in between now.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of lose it. And it just becomes one of those, I'm going here and I don't want to do anything else, because nothing else that I'm going to find, short of going overseas and doing contract work, is going to pay the same.
Right.
So, and I'm not going to go in and just like get hired as a VP somewhere.
Yeah. No, you got to make a living, and you got to think about, retirement, pension, and, benefits, insurance, all that other kind of stuff. That all plays a factor. So and if anybody understands that, it's our audience. These are men and women who grind away Monday through Friday every week. Doing hard labor. So they understand. They know the grind.
Yeah, the masses are not independently wealthy. So
yeah, but they do like to hunt.
Correct. So, and that's where I was at. I had a lot of fun the first year.
Yeah.
It was just like, it literally was every single time I had time off, I was running and gunning somewhere, whether it was pigs, chasing deer, doing whatever. It was all over the place. And, taking the kid out to the ground blind and, or spotting for the wife and everything. We were doing all of it. And then the next year we didn't do the deer lease, and it got harder and harder, with, the health side of things, starting to crumble a little bit. And that was a long process, and I don't know if I've even mentioned it on any of the other shows, but
I think one episode we maybe vaguely touched it, but
but at any rate, there was cancer diagnosis, and not me, but obviously any cancer diagnosis is going to wreak havoc on the life.
Yeah.
So things were pinched, and I think that's where everything started to spiral a little bit as far as like, hunting started to become something I had to do instead of something I wanted to do. So there I was, and I put on the face, it's like, oh man, this is awesome. The whole time I was like, yeah, it's not though. So,
Yeah.
and this year was kind of the same thing, but I started to actually get a little bit vocal about it. I was just like, man, this is not even fun anymore. I feel like I have to do this just to make sure we don't have to buy meat at the store. Mm-hmm. Which, again, is its own reward.
Yeah, that is a driving force in and of itself. Has been for human beings for generations. As far as I want to know where my meat comes from. I want to eat healthier, cleaner meat. There's a lot of reasons for it for sure. Hunting can serve so many purposes with the mental side of everything, the therapeutic side of everything, but yes, we are also in it to fill the freezer, put food on the table and stuff. And that mental health side of it can definitely feel challenged when you're having a challenging year, because to your point, it turns into more of a task oriented situation. Correct. Instead of something that you just enjoy doing.
Yeah, it starts to it's like pulling a sled.
Yeah.
And it's, as you go on, more and more bricks get piled onto that sled, and it just gets heavier and heavier, and you just like, man, this isn't even fun anymore. So you just want to throw off the yoke and just leave the sled there and just walk away and do something different. But at that point in time, it's like, okay, well, what else am I going to do? Why do I have this if I'm not going to use it?
I've felt similar this year. I had my own version of struggles and everything, but I had plenty of frustrations out there, and they're like, I only killed one deer this year out there with my bow, and I know that I'm bow only, but there were plenty of deer out there to be had. It was just a matter of constantly those 1,000 puzzle pieces, right? Mm-hmm. They weren't falling together like I was planning.
Yeah, you can't find the corner pieces.
Yeah. I had no border pieces. Like, they just took the border pieces out. I had no starting point, right? But yeah, that was a struggle. And there were many times this year where it was like, man, why do I like this? And then I would see a buck in the trees. It's like, oh, all those worries and everything go away, and you're focused on that one thing. Or I'd come home after an unsuccessful trip, and I'm like, all right, I'm taking a break. Like, I'm going to dial it back. I'm going to take a week or two off and not even worry about it. And the very next day, I'm on my phone on the Reveal cell cam app, looking at all my pictures again and trying to figure out what this deer and that deer are doing.
And of course, the giant's sitting there staring at your camera.
Yeah, we can't get away from the game,
right?
So I feel you, man. Like, it's a tough spot.
Well, and like anything else, I mean, I think to a certain point it's an addiction, and look at any addiction, even if you don't enjoy doing it, you're still doing it.
Yep.
I mean, I got a perfect example too, and that's tobacco use. I didn't enjoy it, but I finally quit because I wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah. There's
no point. It was a waste of money. But that was easier. Well, it wasn't really hard, to be honest with you. It's just a mindset thing. And that was the key, not just for that, but for everything. It's all about the mindset. And depending on what kind of podcasts and how many podcasts everybody watches, you'll hear that term a lot. Especially if you're watching podcasts from prior service guys, military-oriented stuff. They're always talking about mindset. And sometimes it sounds pretty cliche. I'll admit that. There's certain terms that I just despise using, and mindset is one of them.
Yeah.
But that's just because it's said so often. But when it comes down to it, mindset drives everything. Mm-hmm. That's just a fact. It's a hard fact. It doesn't change. So whether it's, hunting as an addiction, it's a mindset thing. And the only way to break that addiction to hunting is to completely shift what's between your ears. And it's like that with everything. I'm sure somebody out there knows somebody who's addicted to alcohol or whatever. The only way you can tell them, it doesn't matter. But the only way that they get off that addiction is a mindset change. Mm-hmm. It's the only way to do it. And that comes from within. It's not something that anybody else can do for you. It's not something that you can, it community helps. There's a support thing, whether it's, neighbors or the town or the church or whatever. That all helps, but that's not the primary driver. That all has to come from within. So, and getting back to, the funk that I was in, I mean, all the health stuff was for the original issue from last year was kind of, we're coming out of it. And then I was like, well, I think I probably need to start getting my stuff squared away. And it was kind of a necessity too for work and stuff like that too. So, it's like, all right, cool. Well, I'm not going to keep going to my regular doctor because that's not her wheelhouse. It's just general practice and everything. So we was looking for more of a specific type of deal. And well, I guess since we're going to talk about it anyway, probably anybody out there who is feeling sluggish, has like chronic aches and pains, or can't get rid of the spare tire, any of those types of things. There's like 5 or 6 primary factors that you can identify, and it's like a checklist almost, and it's hilarious because when I finally saw this stuff after somebody had talked to me about it at work, I finally saw this and I was looking and I was like, yep, yep.
I made it 100%.
All right, cool. Yeah, ace that one. And what it was one of 2 things. It was either an HGH deficiency or it was a testosterone deficiency. So I start diving into that a little bit. And I'm like, okay, well, what's going to cause that? Well, it turns out people like me, people like you, people who work in, any kind of a chemical-oriented area or job or something like that. I mean, you're, 60, 70, 80% more likely to have low testosterone than the average bear.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at me personally, I mean, I'm prior service, 2 deployments, been overseas, drank water that sat in the sun for 3 years, that was bottled in a foreign country that doesn't have the same standards that we do. What do you think's in that water?
Oh, yeah.
Nothing good.
Oh, yeah.
So all those microplastics and stuff from the breakdown of the bottles and all this stuff, all these things play a role. Burn pits, everything. You guys have seen it on the news. Jon Stewart just railed Congress about it for years. I mean, we've all seen
stuff,
it. Yeah. Well, that has caused an epidemic of low testosterone in global war and terror vets. Me being one of them.
Yeah.
So I start getting checked for that and doing the testing and all this stuff. And I'm saying all this stuff because nobody really talks about it. And if nobody talks about it, nobody knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to shy away from it just for the simple fact that there might be 10 or 15 people out there right now that are just like, dude, all of that. But they're never going to ask anybody because they think it's normal. And it's not normal. There's nothing normal about being, 35, 40, 45 years old and having the testosterone level of an 80-year-old. And that's what doctors will try and tell you. That's what the VA tried to tell me.
Yeah.
300, oh yeah, you're normal, you're good. Really? Oh, well, guess we're fine then. Go to another doctor, and he's like, no, I'll put you on it right now if you want it. But as it turns out, I'm trying something different, and, we can get to that later. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's a lot of things health-wise that were not correct with me.
Yeah.
And this all came to light, in early November.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, that's kind of like right in the middle of deer season down here. So I'm like, well, this is super.
Prime time.
Uh-huh. So we just finished up, a very steamy October. That was not suitable to hunt in.
Per the usual.
Yeah, gross. We didn't even have that little icy weekend like we had the year before.
No, I think we went out like, I want to say I think it was like the first full week of deer season. Me and the family went out there and everything. And it was one of those deals where you're out there and you're trying to have fun for the kids, but it's like, dude, we're sleeping in a camper and it's just like the sun's down. It's still 80 degrees out here. It's just, it was rough.
Yeah.
I think we went out that time and I hunted, and then I think I went out and hunted one more time at some point for a couple of days in October, and then I didn't go back out there till November because it was just too stinking hot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, so that was October, and then of course I'm trying to cram all these doctor's appointments in on my weekends, and and stuff like that too. And it's like, and that's kind of too where it was like, dude, this is such a drag right now.
Yeah.
And I was so over it because I was doing doctor's appointments and this and that and the other thing and just trying to get this stuff figured out. And of course, I ended up firing 3 doctors in the process of this. So I had to keep starting over every single week, it seemed like.
Yeah, you're giving the same pitch over and over again.
Yeah, and eventually I found the right one. And another pearl of wisdom, and this is something that you and I have talked on, and I'm going to talk to everybody out there now. Do not settle for a doctor that's not going to figure out why.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the situation is. I don't care what it is. If they're not going to spend the time and the testing and do what they need to do to figure out why, fire them and find another one. Doctors need to start being fired so they start doing their jobs and stop being beholden to the pharmaceutical companies that are paying them to prescribe certain pills. End rant. I'm very upset about that still because it wasted a lot of my time. A lot.
If y'all haven't figured it out by now or haven't listened to a podcast with Mike yet, there's no holding back when we sit down here. Like, we might be delicate about how deep we go with some stuff, but, you know, this, what you see is what you get, you know?
But you got to be honest. I mean, there's so many people that just want to beat around the bush and stuff. Just, dude, just say what you got to say. And we were just talking about that on the way in.
Yeah, we were.
You know, the anti-confrontational, I mean, eye contact aversive society we're in right now. It's like, dude, just look me in the eye, have a conversation, tell me what I got to know. It's fine. I'm not going to get hurt about it. And some people who do get hurt about it maybe need to toughen up just a little bit.
No, that's exactly what we were talking about. Just how, if not, you don't have to be confrontational with people. Like, there's a time and a place to challenge them, but just them knowing that you're willing to challenge them on what they're doing. And again, just in today's world, making freaking eye contact. Mm-hmm. Those two things, for whatever reason, just absolutely
scares people.
It scares people nowadays, and it's crazy.
Yeah, you've got I mean, it's getting worse and worse too. I mean, look at the kids.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, thankfully my kid, she will have a conversation with anybody and everybody. You know, and that's the thing. She's not afraid to have that human interaction. But there's a lot of them out there that you put them face to face with somebody and they freeze. They don't know what to do. You put them behind a screen and they'll talk all day long.
Another case for get your kids outdoors, take them hunting, take them fishing.
Absolutely.
Get them started in the great creation.
Absolutely. So, but yeah, now we're through the deer season. This is just the health thing. We'll go back to the whole deer season thing later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just staying on the health part of it, I finally get to the right guy. And I went and had my appointment with him. Well, I had been doing my own thing since early November. So when the VA doctor was the one that kicked the hornet's nest on this, but he didn't realize who he was dealing with. And a lot of people, and this is the fair point that I'll make for doctors, they assume that most people are not willing to make the necessary changes. And that's a fair point.
Yes, 100%. I see that as from my job as a paramedic. Like, I don't ride an ambulance very much these days anymore, but a couple tours ago I happened to be on one, and I had multiple patients, and that throughout the day, that one in particular sticks out. That was just like, I was trying to ask to learn and ask kind of to try and help at the same time, because that's what we're there for. We're there to help. And it was like, well, have you seen your doctor about this condition that you have? Well, they told me this, but I haven't been back. Well, have you taken this medicine for this? Well, they gave it to me, but I haven't taken it. It's like, okay, how do I say in the nicest way possible, you need to try. You need to do
right.
You need to do something.
You have to do your part. You're either going to have to take the medications or you're going to have to make a serious lifestyle change. There's only two options there.
Right.
And most people are going to err on the side of, fine, I'll just take the pill because I like pizza. Which is fine. I mean, if that's what you're going to do, own it.
I like pizza.
I do too.
Pizza's good.
I also really like Skittles. And I liked peanuts. and I like the ones that were coated in chocolate even more.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see where we're going with this. I was eating like a trash can, and it just got worse because of, you know, the health situation that didn't involve me yet. So all of those things, I mean, you know, when you have something like that going on, you know, it's just like, man, I don't even have time for this. I'm just gonna eat whatever, you know. And it's not like I was eating out and stuff. I was still eating venison and wild pig and all those things. But when you're heavily sprinkling your diet with Skittles and, you know, Country Time lemonade, which is pretty much all sugar, and then, you know, compound that with, you know, I had consumed more beer in the last year and a half than I had the prior decade combined. Might have a smidge to do with it.
Yeah, that might influence it.
Yeah, I mean, the VA doctor was just like, oh my God, you're gonna die tomorrow, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I am. So we're gonna go ahead and do this the all natural way. So I went home that day, and I mean, it was like keyword mindset again.
Yep.
Cliche, true, but still cliche. Hate that. So I had a mindset shift and just immediately went back into old school. All right, this is what we're doing. Boom, 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 boom. Everything done. Like, I haven't had a regular tortilla that you get from the store since that doctor's visit.
Really?
That first one. And bear in mind, I fired this doctor. I don't go to him anymore. But that was the catalyst for all of this. So this was early November, and I stopped eating everything. I mean, I haven't had Country Time lemonade since that day. I haven't had a peanut M&M since that day. I hadn't had Skittles. Haven't had. I've had beer, just not the heavies. You know, so I had a couple of what their Michelob Ultra or whatever it is. So I think I've had like a total of 6 of those since early November.
We'll have to bleep out that beer name because there's
okay.
no free
God
free
dang
ads.
it. No free ads. So, man, they snuck one in on me.
You got to pay if you want to hear the uncensored version.
I'll put my Venmo up there. So anyway, yeah, so I obviously drastically cut out a lot of things. Okay, and it was just a switch that flipped. It wasn't a big thing. It was just like, all right, cool, we're doing this now. So in that first month, so my blood pressure, you know, you have your systolic and diastolic. Well, the top number went down by 10, the bottom number went down by 18. So I dropped 10 over 18 in a matter of like 3-ish weeks, 3.5 weeks. So that was pretty sizable. Resting heart rate went down 10 beats per minute.
Yeah.
So let's see, I was down like 18 pounds in those 3 weeks. 2 inches off my waist in a month. That was just sugar detox. That's all that was. That I wasn't working out. I wasn't taking anything. I wasn't doing any. That was just diet. That's it.
Yeah, that's just eating cleaner and that inflammation, everything going down.
All of it went away. And the chronic pain that I had had for over a decade in my neck, my back, hips, shoulders, everything was just on fire daily. Gone. And the injuries are still there, but they don't hurt every single day like they used to. So all of those things, that was an immediate change. And that was sugar toxicity. So take that into account on, you know, how you're feeling. And if you have those aches and pains and stuff, that there could be a different factor too, but that might be one that you could affect immediately. So there's one. Now I go and I get my my blood work done at a different doctor, who I have also fired since then, because they were hard set on an arbitrary number instead of doing what's best for the patient. I'm like, okay, so you're not interested in the why. You're not interested in fixing the problem. You're just interested in this. Cool. Bye.
Yeah.
But what happened, and this is an interesting physiological thing that I actually talked to a couple of nurses about, and it makes sense, the philosophy, the theory behind it. But my glucose, my blood sugar was at, you know, X at, you know, early November. Now when I go in for this early December and got my blood sugar, it was higher, even though I'd cut out all the sugar. And I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. How? I mean, I cut all this, why is it going up? And now it makes sense because I was reactive to it. And this nurse that I talked to was just like, oh, no, think about it. You weren't working out, right? And I was like, no. So you didn't have anywhere for all this extra energy that you're melting off to go. It's all sitting in your blood. So that's why it spiked. And they're like, yeah. And I said, okay. So what changed since then? And the nurse was like, well, you started working out like a week after that, right? Yeah. And you started taking this other thing. Can't say what it is because no free ads.
Let's be clear, I'm kidding with that.
Well, I started it on that last one because it was that podcast that wouldn't answer my message.
This is stuff that's working for you, like that. It's a shameless plug.
So
yeah.
So after, and just to freak everybody out here, my glucose was like 220 at this point in time, which
Hi.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, all right, that one's up there.
Yeah.
That was like, even for me, I was just like, ooh, okay. So that's when I made the decision, instead of just waiting and waiting and waiting before I started taking this new compound. It's called BioPro. So I started taking that immediately, right? Because what it is growth factors. And there's one particular growth factor in there that is hugely important for like your blood sugar and, tissue repair, which equates to muscle growth and things like that. And it's called IGF-1. It's insulin-like growth factor 1. And most of the time we don't get that. So that's one of the prime drivers of why your blood sugar stays high. Mm-hmm. So from that early December 220-ish number to my last one a month later in early January, I dropped 100 points.
Wow.
100 points.
That's pretty good.
So that IGF-1 was cramming all of that sugar into my cells to be metabolized and used as energy while I was working out. So since I started taking BioPro, everything's still level, but my REM sleep has tripled, which means I'm getting more muscle repair. I used to get like 20 to 30 minutes in a 9-hour block. So I was sleeping a lot, but I wasn't sleeping good.
Yeah.
Now I'm sleeping like 7.5 hours, and I'm getting an hour and a half of REM sleep. So I'm getting an hour and a half less total sleep, but I'm tripled my REM sleep. So I'm getting way more recovery. Mm-hmm. Feel better, more energy, all this stuff, right? Lost another inch off my waist. So that's 3 inches in 3 months.
That's pretty good. And you
made 3 inches in 2 months.
Yeah, it'd be less than 3 months. You made a comment when you came in here that this glorious shirt that you're wearing is the first shirt large that you fit in a long time.
In about a decade, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
This thing's been folded up, sitting in my drawer for, I think it was an oopsie delivery, my first deployment in 04 and 05. So 20 years that this shirt's been folded up in the drawer.
Dang.
And now I fit in it.
I wouldn't have guessed it was that old.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't even think Ranger Up does shirts anymore. I don't even think it's a thing. I know, 9-line or something.
It looks fresh. It looks clean. It's good.
Yeah, it's never been worn.
Yeah.
Still had the tag on it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, all these things, it's like night and day difference. And the attitude shift since then has been complete. It's like when I saw the pigs come back, I was like, man, grab the bow. Went up there, drew it back. There was zero struggle on a 70-pound draw. Like, it was starting to get heavy. Like, we had talked about it.
You had talked to me, like, pretty much ever since you started bow hunting, with the exception, I don't think we talked about it a whole lot this year, but first 2 years that you're bow hunting, I'm pretty sure it was a pretty consistent comment that was thrown in there regularly as far as, hey, eventually, like in 5 years, I'll probably be going to a crossbow because I don't think I'll be able to pull this back anymore. You were frequently telling me that, and that's how you felt.
Yeah.
So
it's because I was sugar toxic. I was killing myself.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah. And now, I drew it back the other day, and it was just like butter. Straight back, straight through, and granted, it was only 28 yards, but I was just doing a confirmation shot on those on the pig arrows. They're my old ones.
Yeah.
So did a confirmation shot at 28 yards, and the first shot I was like, okay, cool. So I made a little adjustment on it because it wasn't going to be exact because it's a heavier arrow. So I made a little adjustment on the elevation, and I had to do a hold off to the right side because there was crosswind from where I was shooting. So I had to do a 3-inch hold. I do that, I sunk it right on the crosshairs. The second shot, I was like, well, all right.
Nice.
Go ahead and switch this one out and just go for it then. So yeah, I mean, but it was like the easiest, and I just shot like 3 or 4 more just for giggles, and yeah, it just wasn't tired, nothing. I mean, there was no pain, there was no burn, there was no. I mean, it was a completely different experience. So I mean, that's another thing too. Is like that dietary change. I mean, it sounds like I'm sitting here preaching about fitness and all this stuff, and where I am. But what it is going to do for the rest of the things that you do. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I mean, it's everything. I mean, your personal life, your interactions with your kids, your spouse, your interactions with your coworkers, your ability to do stuff, how much energy you have. I mean, chasing chickens.
You're not wrong.
I mean, they used to be such a drag because they're very stupid. And now it's just like, okay, cool. Well, I can deal with this. And of course, it also helps with the dog that just showed up 2 weeks ago. They don't like him, so they run for the chicken coop now.
You also were kind of forced a new friend.
Yeah. He chose. Cat distribution system works for dogs too, by the way, just so you're all aware of that. But yeah, I mean, all these different things that it affects. I mean, down to the hunting draw, your ability to pay attention when you're in the blind. How often do people sit out there? I mean, you just look at it. You look at it yourself. You're sitting out there and you don't see anything. You don't see anything. Or it's dark. You're out there an hour and a half before the sun comes up. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? Are you, I mean, like I'll sit there and like I'll be we call it airplane sleep, where you're still alert and you can hear everything around, but you are like that close to passing out.
Yep.
And it's almost like a meditation type thing.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're just there. Your heart rate's super, super low. You're just almost shut down. And you're just waiting. And then, if you're a Texas hunter and you hunt over feeders or whatever, then the feeder goes off and scares the crap out of you. Had that happen multiple times.
Yeah, too. I had I probably could have shot one of our target bucks if I hadn't have been in that state, because normally I stand up. Like, my tree stand has a seat, right? So when I get in super early, I sit down, because it's an hour before it's going to get light or, close to. Mm-hmm. So I sit down, and then normally before it gets close to that legal light standpoint, while I still have some cover of darkness, then I transition to standing up. And I'm standing up really at least until the sun is completely up. If nothing's moving, then I might normally, like, throughout the course of a hunt, I'll try to alternate. Like, if nothing's moving, if it's not prime time, I'll sit for 5 minutes and I'll stand for like 20. Mm-hmm. That's normally kind of my balance. But I got into that zone like you're talking about, and I'm sitting there chilling, and the next thing I know, it's light and there's a buck standing there at 20 yards looking at me, and I haven't even moved. I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, uh-oh, I messed up. This is not how this was supposed to go. I was supposed to be standing with my bow in my hand already, and I got too deep into the zone right there. I wasn't asleep. My eyes were open. I saw him step out, but as soon as I saw the brush move where he was, I was like, oh, I messed up.
Yep. Yeah, now you got to try and be super stealthy, and it's always easier if they're facing directly at you or facing directly away from you, because anything to the side, they're going to see it.
He slow rolled it 30 yards from one side of the clearing to the other. He was in my window for 30 seconds, which is plenty of time in the archery world, but not plenty of time when you're sitting down and you don't have your bow in your hand.
Yeah.
And that's 100% on me. But
yeah. So that whole meditative state is a very dangerous thing too if you're
careless.
Get something, yeah. So it's not as bad if you're, just hog hunting or something like that, and you got a rifle in your hand. You can correct that mistake pretty quick. But yeah, archery's a different animal. But Yeah, I mean, looking at all the physiological changes that all these things, even if you're not going to go full bore and, you start working out and, like the BioPro or some supplement or anything like that, or even if it's just a diet correction, you'd be amazed at what that'll do to you. Just those subtle little things. But it all starts, I mean, if you're not going to, I mean, this is just my sage wisdom coming out. If you're not going to do the diet part, don't bother doing the rest of it either. Because it all starts there. So, and I'm not saying you have to eat like a bodybuilder 24/7, because not even bodybuilders do that. But they're not eating, a 5-pound bag of Skittles every month either.
That sounds, when you say it like that, it sounds so gross.
It does sound gross, but man, it's delicious.
5 pounds of Skittles.
I miss those things so bad. But, I mean, it is what it is. Like, you got to scratch the itch too. It's just like, I usually on Mondays I will allow myself to have like a pizza and stuff like that, but the rest of the week I'll like meal prep all my stuff for work, which is easy because I'm at work.
Right.
But it's funny too, because people at work will come by and they'll be like, dude, what are you doing? Is this like a buffet over here? Because I'll have like 15 Tupperwares opened up, and I'm like, all my ingredients and everything, they're all chopped up and prepped for the entire week, and then I cook the meat and everything's ready to go, right? So like this week I did 3 days. It was like venison steaks and green beans, which was pretty simple. It was like a dirty carnivore type thing. And then the last couple of days I was like, it's kind of a pain, because you don't want to overcook the steak. So you leave it pretty raw, because you're going to have to warm it up at work again. So, it's like labor intensive. Sounds really stupid, but
no,
it's a pain.
People that meal prep know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I was like, man, I can't do this the last 2 days. So I ended up doing, I took the other 2 steaks that I had and I trimmed them up, and I did this whole thin slice thing, and I had venison steak tacos. Refried beans, jalapenos, onions, lettuce, all the goods, right? I had all the stuff on it. And I had people like poking their head. They're like, how much of that you got, guy? You want one? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, kind of.
So I was sharing. And that's the other thing with hunting too. I mean, if you're not going to share, a little bit of it at least, then you're kind of a jerk, right?
Yeah. Unless you only have one deer for the whole year, then then it's like, oh man.
That's a little different.
No,
but I mean, like in the situation we're at, that first year, like I said, we had a lot of fun, and we had all these different locations, so we could tag out.
Yeah.
And we did, and we've still got meat from that first season that's in the freezer.
I was going to say, like, I say that, and I definitely appreciate and value the sharing aspect you talked about, and we certainly try to do that as well. We're not strapped for meat this year, because I still have a little bit of mule deer left in there, I'm pretty sure, somewhere floating around the freezer, and we just butchered that cow this year. So we have a bunch of meat from that, and then I have my deer, and then talking about sharing, the guys that I went elk hunting with, even though I didn't kill an elk, they're like, hey, you came up here from Texas, here's a little bit of elk meat to go home with, and they didn't have to do that, but they did, so.
Well, and also, like, there's some of the people at work too. I mean, a lot of those people don't hunt, so it brings in that interest.
Yeah, what does deer taste like? What does wild hog taste like?
I've had people that are just terrified to try it. They're just like, oh my God, it's going to be so bad. Just like, trust me.
Well, it's all...
Just taste it.
I have had gamey venison.
Oh, yeah.
It's all in the preparation, and how the meat's cared for, how it's cooked, all that kind of stuff. 100% you can jack up venison, and for whatever reason, just because it's venison, if you jack it up, it tastes worse than if you mess up a ribeye steak from a cow. But neither here nor there. It's all in how you prepare it.
Yep. This stuff, these steaks that I made, it was just salt and pepper with a little bit of chipotle sprinkled over the top of it, and that was it.
Yeah.
So it had the the sand and gravel flavor, and then it also had that little bit of burn from the chipotle, which isn't much. I mean, I don't even taste it anymore. Of course, everybody tells me my taste buds are dead anyway after sucking down Tabasco in the Army for 15 years, but whatever.
I like that little kick that Chipotles have. My wife and her side of the family, my father-in-law, they're if she gets a piece of pizza, you can't see the pizza. There's so much crushed red peppers
Yes,
on top
that's
of
the
it.
only way to eat a pepperoni pizza.
I can't do that.
Oh,
I
yes, no.
cannot do that. I like a little bit of spice, but I can't just burn the inside of my mouth off.
Got to. It's got to burn going in and going out.
Can't do it.
So, but yeah, get right with the health if you're going to do it at all. You'd be amazed at the changes that it'll make, and it's not like you have to go crazy on it. Still have your trash can day, eat some fun stuff. I mean, I was in a kind of a critical area there for a little bit because I was being really, really bad to myself. Right now, I can probably go back and enjoy some of the things, but I'm already in there, so I mean, I'm not going to change it just yet. I'm just going to keep riding it out. And there's things that are happening in the spring with the kid and her sports and stuff like that. We'll be going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship, and we'll be eating junk food for a week. So I mean, my time will come again anyway. So, and then I'll have to get back on the bandwagon. And
again, and you've hit it on the head multiple times. Just the mentality and the focus, the intentionality that you can put behind it as a person, the discipline that you can have. That's what makes a difference.
Yeah.
And like I remember when I, going on 4 years ago now, when I went on my health kick and lost a bunch of weight and got down to 165 pounds and, smaller than I should have been, like borderline unhealthy how I went about it. But I got free of all that other stuff, and I've been able to come back stronger with more muscle. Obviously, I'm not 165 pounds anymore. Could I use to cut out maybe a little bit more sugars and stuff? Because, yeah, I got a freaking sweet tooth. Yeah, all of us could benefit from that. But I definitely am doing things a lot better than I ever was before then. So it comes back to discipline. And I've told people that fitness it's a journey. There's not necessarily you can have goals along that journey, but it's not like, all right, destination reached. Hit my goal. Now I'm down to, 190 or 180 or whatever and shredded. All right, we made it. Now we can go back to what we were doing.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
Yep.
So
no, it's a constant state, and you don't have to be elevated in that state at all times. Like right now, I'm pretty elevated in it because there's a lot of work to undo.
Right.
Or a lot of damage to undo, I guess. So yeah, I'm elevated, and I have been for the last, it's almost 7 weeks now. I'm just counting the rows and the boxes on that stuff. So yeah, we're coming up on the end of 7 weeks. So I'm not even 2 months into this, and
big results.
Yeah, it's amazing, and like I said, I mean, it was night one, my first sleep cycle after taking BioPro. Went from 20 to 30 minutes to an hour and 48 minutes of REM sleep after that first treatment.
Wow.
So they say you'll see some effects within days. I saw it within hours. That's just how starved my body was for those growth factors. And I was eating pretty good. I mean, granted, I was, putting a lot of sugar in there and stuff. And that does, sugar's a blocker too. I mean, it'll block nutrients. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But I mean, I was still eating the venison and the wild pig and the veggies and all that stuff. I was doing a lot of the right things, but I was doing some pretty catastrophic wrong things too. And those things will counteract each other. But just because you are eating healthy doesn't mean that you're still necessarily getting what your body needs, because a lot of the stuff that we get from the store ain't really food. The meat that we get, and this is going on a whole nother tangent, but it is very relevant to what we're doing here. We hunt to fill freezers by and large. That's what a lot of people are doing it for. And yeah, it's more time costly rather than just going to the store for an hour and grabbing a bunch of meat and putting it in the freezer. Yeah, it takes a lot more time. You're spending hours out in the blind. You're spending hours in the off season, days, weeks sometimes, prepping the area and making sure your shooting lanes are correct and your setups, your blinds, whatever, however you're going to hunt, making sure that stuff's all there. You're looking for scrapes, you're looking for rubs, you're trying to track, you're doing all these things. It takes time. Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier just to go to the store. It's also a lot unhealthier. There's a chemical that, like, we export meat to China and Russia, right? Mm-hmm. Our meat that we export to those two countries has to be and I'm going to say this word wrong, I'm sure, but it's the way it makes sense to me. It's a chemical called ractopamine, and I don't know what it does. All I know is that it ain't great for us, and I'm pretty sure it was linked to cancer or something like that.
Aren't they all?
Yeah. So there's something. I mean, it's like really, really not great for us at all. And this hormone or whatever it is, this chemical compound, has to be certified ractopamine free to go to China or Russia. Doesn't have to for the USDA.
Interesting.
Ain't it?
Yeah.
So it's cool that we eat this stuff and poison ourselves. But God forbid that we export it to Russia or China, because they won't buy it. They'll turn that ship around if it's not stamp certified free. So
take that information for what it's worth to you.
So yeah, and that's why these companies like, I mean, you've seen them all over. I mean, there's like these meat companies that'll ship meat to your door. Okay, they're the same way. They do not put any of these additional compounds in their food or their animals when they're raising them. They're all grass fed. No grain finishing or anything. It's all grass all the way through. Pasture raised, chicken, ducks, wild caught fish and all these things. Like all these things are out there and these options are there. Does it cost a little bit more? Sure. But if, it's a good way to supplement what you're doing with the hunting side too. But getting away from those, it's an easy win for your longevity and your health is to get away from store-bought meat.
Yeah.
Or at least until we make some changes in how our USDA is run and we get some things changed and certified free, and we can't use that stuff. Banning red dye 3 or whatever it was, that was a nice first step.
Yeah.
Can't use it on lipstick, but man, we can drink it. Makes perfect sense.
Oh man. Well, so the hunting.
Moving on.
We when we were talking about this episode and kind of throwing stuff out there beforehand, like I'm glad we dove deep on this, and some people may be thinking like, man, I thought this was a hunting podcast. I thought that this guy Mike was just going to get on here and talk about how Kentucky's banning more pigs or whichever state's next, but this part of your journey, I think, has been. I'm glad you dove deep because, one, it tells a big chunk of your story and the story from this season, what you're going through. It sets the stage for a lot coming up, I feel like. And then, hopefully, I don't know, maybe one small piece of this helps somebody else out there, motivates somebody else out there, is the missing piece in that puzzle that they're looking for, whatever it might be. So I hope that it serves its purpose through that. We will talk a little bit of hunting here before we wrap it up, though, because I saved the episode number 223 for you. I was like, man, Mike needs this one. This is Mike's episode 223. So here we are.
And that was the reload.
Yep.
That was the reload. So yeah, there was some frustration this year. Obviously more than what I just talked about. There was added frustration to it too. But yeah, this year it was I moved the location a little bit. It wasn't an entirely new area. It was same area. I just moved it like, I don't know, 75 feet to the right.
Yeah, just trying to set yourself up a little better.
Yeah, put up a new location for the blind. I didn't like the setup I had last year because it seemed like no matter what I was doing, I always seemed to have the wind at my back, and that's not great.
No.
So I know how I got that last one the year before, that December, that big dude. I got him because it was a calm day and he couldn't smell me.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason that he came in. So I was like, okay, I got to move to the side. So I set myself up on the east side because the wind will typically blow south to north. Mm-hmm. So I set up on the east side. We're good to go. Everything starts coming in. And man, you talk about deer. Oh my God. I've showed you the pictures.
Oh, yeah.
There's just, it's an
packed.
obscene amount of deer
It's
that are back there.
packed.
And I mean, we've got, like, the pictures, I've been paying attention because I'm trying to find out when they're going to drop their antlers, and they haven't dropped anything yet.
So, on that note, because over the years, through my hunting journey and in my ignorance, it's always just been like, well, hunting season's over in January, and they're supposed to drop like a month after hunting season, right? So that's just always been my mentality. But then I really started paying attention because the last couple of years, like on our cameras, we still had bucks holding on like in March. And a guy recently put it in perspective for me. I knew they dropped later here than other parts of the country. But he was like, man, and this was when we were talking about like the rut and vegetation, like deer in Texas and in the South not relying heavily on our man-made food sources because we don't get the freezes like they do up north. Like up north, the back half of hunting season almost, you've had these harsh, cold freezes. There's snow on the ground, and the deer are forced to look to the other means of, nutrients and sustenance to survive. Down here, we don't have that. And everybody's like, oh, first freeze, acorns go bitter, then they'll be hitting your feeders. Not true. That freeze, that temperature drop, it has to be a big drop, and it has to be for a longer period of time, right? A consistent long period of time. And for us, that rarely happens in deer season. Our deer start relying heavily on our man-made food sources after hunting season's over. Because that's when, like we all know, January and the snowpocalypse February that Texas is bound to get every February, that's when that happens for us. And just the way that deer are hardwired, right? They have to go through those, and I'm not a deer biologist by any means, but they have to go through those phases and those seasons, right, for their bodies to be like, all right, now it's time to drop these things. And so for Texas, just that period that they are hard-horned in between velvet and drop is longer because of how freaking warm it is down here. So that's the long response to the comment you just made on, I haven't seen them drop yet. I don't think it's going to be till March.
It probably won't. And it's interesting to see how many of these young ones that I have too. I mean, you're like, when I first moved in 3 years ago, I mean, I was looking at a 2-year-old buck and it had spikes still, maybe a fork.
Yeah.
And that was it. Now I'm looking at these 2-year-old bucks and they're 8-pointers.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, I don't know what happened. I mean, well, I do know what happened is protein.
Yeah, you have been putting in the work for three years now to grow better deer. And you are starting at this point to see the results of that. Even in your consolidated corner of the whitetail world, right? In the one little corner, it has an impact. So.
Yeah, and they are. They're. I've got. I mean, there's a 4-pointer that's already out past his ears, and he can't be but a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of 6s, and they're more straight up. And then the 8-pointer that, I mean, he's young too. I mean, they're all like 2-year-olds. They're tiny. They're itty bitties yet. I mean, that 8 might be a 3, but the way he's shaped, I mean, he's not going out like that 4-pointer is. I would say that 4-pointer could possibly be 3.
Yeah.
Maybe. That 8, he's like this wide. I mean, he's just super, super small yet. So he's 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Well, and the other thing that you have the luxury of being able to do too is just, you have years of pictures that you can go and look back on to try and figure out, okay, as these young bucks start becoming mature bucks, you can kind of start figuring out, okay, what has been this buck's progression? Which deer am I looking at right here? Don Higgins, who's a very well-respected whitetail manager in the industry, he told us on this show, he was like, man, unless you have pictures of a buck like for his whole life, he's like, you can't age a deer any better than the next guy. He's like, that you can say, I'm not going to shoot that deer, he's 3, and the next guy be like, no, he's 6, he's good to go. And that's obviously a huge contrast. And you kill a deer and he's a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old or
Well,
whatever.
when you lay them down and you open their mouth up and you see the teeth are ground down to the
that's
nubs.
the ultimate.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate tell, right? But his point just being that, you know, you can guess and maybe guess pretty close, but the only way to truly know is if you have the history with the deer, right? Which you're building a history book back there with these guys.
Oh yeah, we're building some history. So yeah, I've got a new name for one of them, and this is another one that he was on the radar last year, but you know, talking to with me and my wife, we were talking about it. It's like, do we want to take him or do we want to let him grow? We've got the other ones. There was that super wide. God, what was he? He was an 8-pointer, but I called him Big Six the first year.
I remember him, yeah. Super
wide. I mean, he was like a 20-inch spread. It was 19 3/4 or something like that. It was just ridiculous what his spread was. So yeah, I mean, there was that one, and then the dude from December, that last big one, and you know, there's all kinds of targets that were out there.
Oh yeah.
You know, so it's like, all right, we got plenty.
Yeah.
We'll just chill out on this 8-pointer, and we'll let him grow, and we'll see what he turns into. He did not disappoint. You know, and I've shown you pictures of him throughout this year. He's got 2 real nice crab claws on the front, and
nice deer.
You know, he's a weirdo considering the gene pool I have back there, though, because he's not a mutant. You know, everything's very symmetrical on him, and that's one of the few. But I think I know who his kid is, and it's that little 8-pointer running around that's also symmetrical.
Oh yeah, you can see that's the cool thing, and the thing that I like to study when you have that opportunity and that perspective through the cameras in multiple years. You can start to see the family tree grow, you know, and you can pick it apart pretty good sometimes.
Yep. Yeah. So we let him go last year, you know, joint decision on that one. And so he comes back this year, and yeah, he's pretty.
Yeah.
Got one close up, and he had those little spikes coming off of. One was off of the main beam, and one was off of a brow tine, but he had an additional spike. So, depending on the length, I mean, I called him a soft 12, a hard 10. Yeah. So, but he definitely came back, and he looked good. So, and the funny thing is there were a couple of shots taken at this deer, and he's still alive, unscathed. So he has earned the name Neo. So next year when he comes back as a 12 or 14 or whatever he's going to turn into, he's already got his name. I'll have his plaque made. And he's
his spot on the wall is picked out.
It's already there. He is good to go. But yeah, he is a good looking deer. He's big, thick bodies. He'll, and that's the thing is, like, he'll run solo. He'll run with a group. It doesn't. You never know what he's gonna do, which I guess comes with age. He's getting smarter. He's like, well, I mean, it's like I go back to the military thing. You know, if you become a creature of habit, you become a target. So we were trying to avoid being habitual in everything that we did, and that's, you know, old deer aren't stupid.
No, they are. I learned that, and our listeners that are returning are well aware. I learned that definitely this year, and you know, dealing with a very smart buck out at our place that kept playing that cat and mouse game quite a bit. So yeah, they're the biggest ones for a reason, 100%.
Yep. So we had a couple. And I also had Limpy. I tried to pawn Limpy off on you.
Yeah, you tried your hardest, and
He's still there.
Thanks to, again, one of these Texas winter weather events, I had to spend my evening winterizing everything, and as the temperature was actively dropping below freezing on me, instead of out there killing the deer that was standing in front of your ground blind that you were going to put me in. So
yeah, he literally showed it that night. We were talking about you going out there. I think he was like 15 yards in front of the.
Yeah, you texted me. I think it was like at 5:15. He was like, "Well, your boy's down there." I was like, "You gotta be kidding me."
And he was too. It was like he was looking at the camera after we were talking. He'd never looked at the camera like that before, and he was looking right at the camera. I was
He
like,
freaking
dude.
knew. He heard you and me talking in the driveway that day, I'm sure.
So, but yeah, he's one, and we call him Limpy because he's got one of his back legs like it broke, so it's like folded under like that. So he's got 3 legs. He's got 3 wheels.
Yeah, another and a reason that he was one to take out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but because Carrie and I both had our 13-inch or wider tags for Wise County filled.
yep, the great state of
Nothing.
Texas antler restriction rules didn't help with that situation. Hence, you trying to get me to jump on there. So
Yeah, and that's a lot of times, like, I mean, if you got somebody who's got property in another county, you do the buck trade, right? So you go out and take one there, then let them hunt your backyard or whatever you got, and whatever. I mean, it's good for the hunters too, because then you can actually take more deer. You don't have to worry about the antler restrictions because you're not skirting anything.
yeah,
So, but yeah, we each got ours. You know, the one that I got with the bow, I took 2 shots on that one. Yeah, well, we brought the dog out that first time.
yeah. We put the dog to work and got him a rep. Unfortunately, wasn't what we were hopeful for, and I felt bad, man. But I mean, that dog's going on 3 years old now, and he's had a decent amount of tracks under him at this point, between me and a couple with you and some other folks in the area. And man, it's just, I feel bad for him, because obviously when people call me for a blood dog, it's because something went wrong, right? You're not just going to call a guy with a dog because you're, playing it safe. I mean, you might, but
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying. You make a good shot, have a good blood trail. You're not calling a dog. So, like, majority of the tracks that he's had have just been, we run out of property, or the hunter before we got there has walked all over the whole area, walked down every trail and everything, and he's having a hard time latching on. Again, he's a younger dog. I'm still working with him on stuff, or just all these different circumstances. Like another one where the deer was still alive. This was season before this one that just ended, but we went out for a track with a hunter, and we're on the trail, and the hunter split off and went another way and ended up in front of us and bumped the deer. It's like before we even got up there. It's stuff like that has just been, I feel bad for the dog. I'm like, dude, you need a win, which is why whenever I kill a deer, on the rare occasion that happens, that I'm always like, okay, I know I got a good blood trail, like we got a good shot, but I'm bringing you out here just so that you can know what it feels like to find something good at the end of this thing, which he got that opportunity this year. But going back to yours, I've had enough of those unsuccessful ones that when I walk up and the dude's got an arrow in his hand, and arrows are cool because you can kind of see what, kind of the preview to what you're dealing with. But I felt bad walking up and seeing the meaty glaze over it and the hair, and it's like, we're not going to find this deer, man. But we ran the dog, and he found your pig kill from
a
couple weeks before.
and when I brought Asha and Carrie out there, we were thinking about moving the feeders, and we ended up not. So we just kind of looked, and I wanted to show Asha what a rub looked like. So we went back to that one that we found with the dog that day. And I showed her that, and then I started talking about how we found that pig, and Asha was like, "Wow, I want to see." Okay, cool. So I brought her down there, and she just goes right up to it. 10-year-old goes right up to and picks up the skull that was still sitting there, and then she started looking around, and she's like, "Oh, there's more bones over here." So she found all the ribs and stuff like that, and she found a shoulder blade, and she found the bottom jaw.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So we ended up taking the whole thing back. Now we've got that.
Now you got a pig skull. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we got that whole thing back there. So that was kind of funny, but yeah, I mean, at least he did find something. that day, and found a turtle too.
Well, and I had forgotten about your pig experience. I think you texted me or something, and like when it had happened, and I completely forgot about it. So he comes up on this pile of hair and bones, and I'm like, dude, what'd you kill back here?
I'm like,
when did this happen?
That was that pig. That was a pig, yeah. It's no big deal.
There's where my pig went.
Yeah. I walked right past that day. That was when the grass was super tall, too. I walked right past this wounded sow that was dying probably 5 times. Like, almost tripped over her. Because they probably dragged her out of her hidey hole to eat her. But she wasn't that far because she was a full-grown sow. And I had never had one run after hitting it with a 50 Beowulf before. She took off running after getting hit by that sledgehammer. And it's like, all right, well.
Critters are tough.
Good on you.
They're tough.
Normally they just fold. Just like down, done. Because the kinetic energy of that thing just turns turns everything into mush.
Yeah.
So, and her being able to run away like that, it was ridiculous. Me and Tyler followed that blood trail for, like an hour and a half?
Yeah.
And we were meticulous. He was on his hands and knees, flashlight, little pen light flashlight in his mouth, and he was just like moving, and he'd find a drop and he'd be like, okay, and he'd direction it, and he'd keep on going, like crazy good tracking skills. Huh. And he couldn't even figure out where she went at a certain point. She did like a hard left or something, had to for where she ended up, and he just never, when she broke, he never found that trail after that.
Was I at work that night? Is that why we didn't bring the dog out?
No, I don't think I ever called because it was like 9:30 and
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, we had the one squealer because my shot broke first, and then his was right behind it. So it wasn't an exact simultaneous, and there was enough of a jump that his pig moved, and he ended up hitting in the butt. Mm. So it dragged itself away, and I had to run out there real quick and put it down. So
this is the world of everyday hunter problems. If you don't have these problems, you've never truly hunted.
Yeah,
that's all I can say about that.
There was a lot of just like quirky stuff. But I did find it comical that we're out there trying to look for this buck that we both suspected was not laying down. Mm-hmm. But it turns out it was a brisket hit.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
right
confirmed it later.
Yeah. Because it was like 10 days later or something like that. I was out there and he was kind of limping a little bit. You could tell he was a little bit sore, but he wasn't hurt. It was a meat injury.
Yeah.
And he came right on in like there's no big deal. Just had a little bit of a hitch and like, okay, well, I guess you're going to do it. So same arrow, same broadhead, same everything. Hit him. And just the way he was hunched down, of course, the broadhead goes right through his front leg, his upper leg, hits the bone, cuts right through it, and goes through, hits the other side. And when that deer took off, the first jump, it didn't do anything to the shaft. But when he planted his front legs on that second one and pushed off, it snapped the arrow in half and flung it, like it started spinning off to the side.
Oh, dang.
And I'm like, ooh, that might have been a good shot. So waited a second and, I didn't, and this is the other thing, like going back to that whole, like it wasn't that much fun this year. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the same feeling I did the year before when I got that big dude, where like I was like almost nauseous because the adrenaline dump. I didn't have that. Didn't have any of it. And I was like, man, this is a problem. That wasn't like the forefront of my thought, but afterwards I was just like, that's not good.
Yeah.
I should have a little bit of excitement, a little bit of juice, and, but just nothing. But anyway, so I go out there and I see what happened and, where he pushed off and, back legs, front legs, all that stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. Oh, there's the blood. So I think I followed it for like 10 feet or so. And I saw the arrow, the shaft, and the lighted nock sitting there where it flung off and helicoptered into the grass. Saw that. And there was like blood spray that came off of it too. Mm. So it was a good hit. And I'm like, all right, sweet. We're good here. I think he's over there laying down probably about 60 yards away. So I kind of just backed up and, obviously didn't want to pressure him and push him if he wasn't dead yet and everything. So Walked down the trail, and did I call you on that one? And I think you guys were out of town.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the day we were in Arlington at the concert.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Okay, yeah, because I knew that was a good trail, and that was going to be a gimme, and that was like what we were talking about, getting the win for him.
Yeah.
So, but I knew we were going to be able to find him anyway. So when you said you guys were out of town, I was like, all right, cool. So I called the wife, and I was like, hey, grab the side by side and come back here. And then as she's driving back, I realized, I was like, she's never seen the new spot. Because this is before, like, this was in, I think it was still in archery season, wasn't it? Or was it early? It might have been early October or early November. But
this hunt,
yeah,
it was like the first weekend in November.
It was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, it was right before all the doctor's appointments started. So she hadn't been back there because I was doing all the feeders and stuff like that, and she was busy running, Asha with the whole cheer thing and all that stuff. So she hadn't been back there, and she's like driving the long way around, like she was going to the old spot where it was last year that she knew.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to call her, and she's not answering. I was like, dude, what is she doing? And then it dawned on me. I was like, oh, she doesn't know where the blind's at. So I'm like walking out in the middle of this, like that one grassy area that's back there,
yeah,
hoping that she comes back around. I knew she was going to have to. She's either going to come in between the trees, or she's going to turn around and come back down that original trail when she realized nothing was there. And she finally does, and I flag her down, and she's like, oh, okay, cool. So she goes down the main trail, and she's like, oh, this is where you put it. Yeah. And she's like, well, I haven't been back here yet. And I was like, I kind of figured that after you went the other way.
Yeah, we figured that one out.
So, but anyway, yeah, so she starts tracking, and I just kind of let her go. And so we'd see something, and I'd be like, okay, I've got it here. Go ahead and go over that way. And she went through, and she's tracking it. And it was funny too, because I'm like, hey, you got to stay on the blood trail. And I'm like, kind of getting pissed about it. And I was like, get on the blood trail so I can move up and keep tracking. He's right there. What? And I walk over. Yeah, this big old horse is just laying there. I was like, oh.
Got him.
It's right there. Neat. So, and he was the one where, I opened his mouth up, and like his teeth were ground down to nothing. So,
yeah,
however old that makes him, he was that old.
Yeah, old deer.
And battle scars. I mean, he had scars and just cuts, nicks on his ear, everything. I mean, he was an old warrior.
Yeah.
He had fought a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And he still had broken tines this year, too. So he was getting after it.
Oh, yeah.
So, big dude. When I strung him up, I've got those 8-foot poles. So he was probably, where the gambrel hooks go in at the Achilles. It's probably 7 feet off the ground, and his nose was touching the ground.
That's a big deer.
So
especially for Texas, that's a big deer.
And yeah, the rifle shot, Carrie's deer later on, that was the same way.
Yeah.
Hung him up, after we recovered him, pulled him back, hung him up 7 feet in the air at the Achilles, and nose was touching the ground. I was like, dude, those are not small.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between drought years and, this year we didn't have it. Well, I mean, it's still technically a drought year, but
it wasn't like
way
it has
wetter
been.
than normal.
Yeah.
So
I've wanted to ask you, because you and I we've had these conversations and stuff, and you've talked to me not on the show about the difference that you have learned and that's frustrated you with shooting arrow after arrow at a bag or a block and feeling dialed and nothing going that way or feeling that way when you are in the stand archery hunting. I wanted to ask you about that and ask you year 3 how you're feeling about that, because I know that has been something that you've been, again, just with the mentality of all that and how it translates from target shooting to actually putting an arrow in an animal, a well-placed shot on an animal, I should say.
I think a lot of, like with me, I don't always go out and do that test fire before I go out. And I know some guys do and some guys don't. I haven't, but I can tell you when I went out after I confirmed that shot for the pigs before I went out there last week, or a week and a half ago, or however long it was. I shot that and I felt different about that. Like I was like, okay. And granted, part of that is, with the changes, right?
Right.
Physically, I didn't have that strain. The draw was there. Everything was good. So that was different. And that, of course, is going to play mentally too. And I think that's probably part of it too, is like, when in the state that I was in, I was already worn down just by what I was doing to myself. So you compound that with, getting up at the butt crack of dawn or before and going out there and sitting for an hour and a half in the cold, and then you're trying to take what amounts to a cold bore shot, but the bore is your body, not the barrel. So it's different with steel being cold versus a body being cold. When you're cold, you're stiffer, you're more rigid. So, and that's a lot different than when you're doing your run up in August and September and you're shooting 20, 30 arrows a day, trying to get dialed in and perfect, and you know exactly how everything feels, where you're sweating your butt off. Because it's, at 10, 7, 8, 9, 10 in the morning, you're looking at 85 to 95 degrees.
1 million degrees. Yeah.
So that's very different than going out there in, a decently cool morning in November. I mean, it's Texas, so sorry, Northerners. I used to be one. When it gets down to 45 degrees, that's very different from 95. And when you're used to being out in those elements all summer, that's going to play an effect on your accuracy and your ability to take that cold shot.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, and for some situations, it's not always practical to go out. That's why I ended up just leaving my bag out there and just putting a tarp over it. And I always had a field tip with me, and I'd go out there and I'd shoot that field tip first. And if I didn't like that shot, I would go back and I'd shoot it again, and I wouldn't go out there until I shot that field tip where I wanted it.
Yeah.
And then I'd switch the tips out and put the broadhead back on, and that was my primary arrow. So that's what I did this year. And I didn't do that until after, I had that bad shot.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what caused that one. I don't know. It had to be me, obviously, because it's not like I was using fixed blades this year. I wasn't using the mechanicals.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was the other shot that I had where the blade kicked open and it threw the trajectory off and missed by 3 feet. It's awful. I felt terrible for that guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think the practice aspect of it, in the elements. I mean, it's hard to replicate that in the run up to a season, but if at all possible, I think something to help the mental game of it is to take that practice shot.
Oh yeah.
And give yourself an extra 10 minutes. It don't take a long time. So if you're going out there an hour before your feeder goes off, or an hour before, this buck typically comes down a trail, however you're hunting, if at all possible, take an extra 5 minutes and take those couple of practice shots. And it might make all the difference. It might make no difference. Who knows?
Yeah. Because
you still, granted, I didn't feel it this year, but buck fever is a real thing too. And that'll play a role on your dexterity. And, you get tunnel visioned.
Yeah.
All those things happen. Like when I had it with that one from last year, year before this past year, it was a struggle because I felt like he could hear my heart beating from 48 yards away.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like he could hear it because it was like deafeningly loud.
It's pounding in your head.
Yes. And like everything, it just seemed like everything was so loud. But what that was that's that old school, that's that caveman thing coming out in us. That primal thing where it enhances all your senses. Like, and that's where that tunnel vision, you see what you're looking at, and you focus in on that, and you see so much clearer that one thing, but you lose your focus on the rest of it because you're locked in. Because we're predators, we're wired that way. That's why our eyes are in front. We lock in on that, and that all goes away. Everything out here goes away. And we just that one thing.
Yeah.
And that's the tunnel vision. And your hearing gets better. You can hear everything that goes on around. That's why you can hear your heart pounding in your chest, because everything's just enhanced. You know, and I don't know, I haven't experienced the smell side of it yet, but that's there too. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, especially after, like when you go up there to the feeders and stuff like that, after, or wherever the impact area is, and you go up there, you smell that urine and that musk and everything. Yeah. That's it too. Normally you don't catch that. You can catch a whiff of it every now and then, but man, when you're really locked in like that and you're kicking back to those basal instincts, you can smell it, you can see all that stuff is like right there. Everything's heightened. So that's going to play a role in all it too. So you can elevate those things artificially. You know, they do it in like sniper training and stuff. They'll make them run like a 2-mile run to the next station, and then they have to get down and take a shot with an elevated heart rate. Okay, it's similar, but it's not the same.
Yeah, there's the contrast of, you like in the archery world, you have the guys that do the total archery challenge, or that train for hunting in the mountains or out west, you know, where you're climbing, you're running, you're exerting yourself just like you just talked about, and then you have to execute and take a shot. And then guys that the opposite contrast to that is guys that hunt in ground blinds, that, you know, they practice shooting from a chair, you know. You try to replicate the environments, but to a certain extent actually drawing back and putting a pin on an animal. One, I'm a big proponent of, like, if you can get a 3D target, like an animal target, I think that does a world of difference opposed to just shooting dots for practice, as far as, you know, ensuring that you're holding in the right spot, your shot placement is correct. It kind of tunes your mind a little bit better into, okay, what if they drop? What if, you know, where do I need to hold at this distance at, you know, this random 37-yard shot, or whatever you come up with. And then one thing that was impressive to me, because I watched a lot of elk videos leading into my elk hunt this last year, and Cam Haines does it. I have mad respect for Cam Haines. I think he's a beast. He's a stud. But as far as an archer, I was watching him in some of his films. Multiple times I saw him draw back on an elk and then let down. He was never going to shoot it. It's just, it was an opportunity. He had a bull. I would have shot it, if I'm being honest. It was a perfect bull for Sam Thrash, but it wasn't big enough for Cam Haines. But he had it in his bow range, and he would draw back and go through the whole process, settling the pin and everything short of just pulling the trigger. And then he'd let down. And he turned to the camera on one of them in particular and was like, I forget verbatim what he said, but something along the lines of, you know, never pass an opportunity to practice. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably a pretty good idea. You're sitting in a tree stand or a ground blind, you got a doe or a young buck in front of you. If you have obviously the control on your own equipment and everything to be able to draw back and settle everything and just go through that motion on an actual animal in front of you. I don't know. Probably some rando out there is thinking it's irresponsible, but it can help you kind of get tuned into what that actually feels like, because it's different. It's 100% different. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and it goes back to being behind glass on a rifle too. You do the same thing. I mean, you put crosshairs on it and try and get your wind and elevation call if you're shooting distance and stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's, again, for most guys that are hunting in Texas, it's fixed distance. You know, It's going to be 100 yards or 125 yards, and that's just it.
Right.
But there's the rare occasion, you know, out of the deer lease that time where, you know, the only thing I had left were doe tags. Mm-hmm. And I just happened to see 2 little dots. They were about 900 yards away.
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't taking the shot. I mean, I'm pretty confident, especially with, you know, a 6.5 Creedmoor, will have zero problems hitting a 900-yard target. However, zeroing and getting doped for 900 yards, that takes a 900-yard range.
Yeah.
And didn't have that set up at that particular time. So, I got to get close. So there starts my accelerated stalk.
Yeah.
So I basically did the old school, you know, I knew I was out of sight line for him for at least the first 500 yards. So I picked it up and I shuffled on down there as quick as I could. And so I got to a low spot, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I got to start being quiet. So I just start paying attention to where I was stepping and everything. And got up there, and I'm kind of keeping the sight break, so staying behind the mesquite trees and everything, and getting up there. And all right, cool. So I can go around, go to the next mesquite tree, and I was basically just weaving my way up there. Finally got up close, and I was at the very end of the line as far as the mesquite trees are, and these two does are still sitting there just completely oblivious. And of course, now I'm up against the clock because the sun's about halfway hidden by the horizon, and I'm like, oh boy, I got a half hour. So, all right, well, when in Rome.
Yeah.
So find the crotch of a branch that it's about the right height and everything. So I had to get a wide base, which honestly isn't really the worst thing in the world if you get a wide base and you can lean into the tree. So doing that, and targeted the right hand doe first. Put the crosshairs right on the breadbasket. Estimated she was probably about 80 yards away. So I aimed a little bit higher than I normally would because it's a fast round. It's gonna hit her before she hears it. So take the shot. She takes off, and she's down. All right, sweet. As expected.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking the other doe is just gone, right? Because that's what happens. They just, whoa, that was loud. I'm out of here. So I'm not worried about being quiet at this point. So I'm bulling a china shop coming out of the tree line, and I happen to look up, and here's this doe just staring at me like, blink, blink. What is that? And I'm like, why are you here? I was confused. Like, it took me off guard to the point where I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, do I shoot her? Do I scare her? What, Oh, wait, I still have another tag left. Okay. So I hit her.
Yeah.
So I took 2 does in about 5 minutes, and that was the end of my season at the deer lease.
Yeah. That's how it goes in Texas sometimes.
I'm like, okay, well, turns out I wasn't the only person to do that, because 2 weeks after that, right at the end of the season, one of the other guys on the deer lease, he sends me a picture of 2 dead does, and I was like, what happened there? And he's like, well, I shot the first one, and the second one didn't move. I was like, well, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Happens a lot. I think this year, I still need to have him on the podcast, but I think my dad had that happen to him this past season. I can't remember if it was this year or last year he got a twofer, but I'm pretty sure it was this year.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I probably should have, because, what just happened last night on my way into work, coming up to the stop sign up there, right? And one of the little, it's probably a first year, I don't even think she was bred, but it was a doe. Pretty tiny. Her head was barely above the front of the vehicle that I came up here in. So not terribly big. I don't even think she was breeding age yet. But I saw her. She crawled through the fence on the east side. And I saw her, and I was like, oh, surely she's going to stop. But I was slowing down to a stop sign anyway, so it's like, whatever. And she just straight up walked right in front of the vehicle, like, casually. No
big deal.
Yeah, just like a cow coming to eat out of the bucket. And just casually walked in front of the vehicle, stops, looks at me, and all that was missing was the, what's up? That was it. That was all that was missing. She just looked at me and was like, all right, cool. Well, and just slow walked over to the fence. And I rolled the window down and I yelled at her.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
So yeah, she was one of mine.
One of mine.
She's my problem child. So yeah, it got to the point where the first year, we were working on the feeder, and my stepson was out there, and I came back on the 4-wheeler, and just as I'm coming around the clearing, and I see, like, down the trail, and I see him sitting there, and he's doing this. I was like, what is he doing? I get up closer, and there's like does 25 feet away from him eating corn. He's throwing corn to them, and they're walking right up to him.
Well, that's
They won't do that to me.
Well, no, because you're a big scary man, but you have that was year 1, right? Is that what you said?
That was the first year, yeah.
Yeah, they had nothing nothing to associate with danger. They didn't know, and they've probably been around some person somewhere that's been doing that off their back porch or something around here, you know. So they were far from having any hunting pressure at all, or understanding what, you know, a gunshot sounds like.
He was also seated. You know, he was sitting down and completely non-threatening. I mean, those does, if they wanted to, I mean, you've seen does fight. If they wanted to, they could have hurt him.
Yeah, they're more scared of him than they are.
They usually only fight each other.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was pretty comical. Some of the stuff I saw out there is just like, and I tell people at work this, and one of my friends, she's just like, you have a petting zoo in your backyard.
You could if you wanted to.
It's not terribly inaccurate, to be honest with you. I mean, some of the things you don't really want to pet. I mean, sure, the pigs are friend-shaped when they're little, but they're not friendly. That's like
no, just because they're fun size doesn't mean they're fun.
Dude, those little ones, there's like 40 pounds of hate packed in that 10-pound body.
Oh yeah, they're little
angry
beasts.
But yeah, and that's the other thing now too. I mean, with the deer hunting, I mean, it was pretty much a lackluster season. I mean, we just, you know, filled our Wise County 13-inch tag, and away we go from there. But you know, the big story was like, you know, the prep for next year, because I've got another picture I'll show you, but this is a stranger deer, a stranger buck. I mean, he's friggin' huge too. And he just came out of nowhere. And then there's another, like I think he's a 9-pointer. And this dude come in, and I've never seen him either.
Well, you killed 2 dominant bucks in the area, and I know you got a bunch of young ones, but might not have a young one that's quite ready to step up and fill those shoes, and you get an older one that wanders through, and hey,
well, I think
not
there's
too bad
gonna,
over here.
Yeah, the battle's gonna rage between Neo and these 2 other new guys that are in there, because they're all about the same age, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And Neo's gonna be, like I said, he should be a hard 12 at least next year if he keeps growing at the same rate. Which, I mean, that's not terrible for a backyard low fence or no fence deer. So you got him, and then the dude that I'm going to show you, he was out there earlier today, and he's an 8-pointer, and he's kind of interesting. I don't know if he's got a broken tine or a stunted growth tine on the right side, but it's kind of funky. And then the 9-pointer, he's got a crowd. I almost thought it was Neo at first. But then I saw there were 2 different deer. They almost look identical on the body. They even have the same little scruff marks and stuff, you know, where the fur kind of swirls.
Yeah.
Same everything. I mean, they're almost identical. The only way you can tell them apart is on the right-hand side as he's his right-hand side. If you're looking at him, the left-hand side, he doesn't have the crab claw. He's got a little stump. So I don't know if it got broke or if it just never grew or what, but that's the only way I can tell them apart.
Interesting.
So there's 3 really big ones, and then of course that whole crop of babies that are growing up too that are going to be pretty impressive. I mean, that 8-pointer who's not even close to being outside his ears, I'm fairly excited to see what he turns into. I hope he doesn't get hit by a car.
Yeah. Well, we hope that for all of them around here, the way people drive. But
so
yeah, no, you got plenty of potential running around back there, man, and you know, to kind of bring it full circle and wrap it up, you know, I know it's a challenging year, but you're making good lifestyle changes, you know, when it comes to your own health and well-being, and I see that translating next year, hopefully combined with a healthy deer herd, and lots of options that hopefully you can kind of get some of that fire back under you a little bit with what hunting is. So you've had a couple of years with some extenuating circumstances, hopefully kind of get through it and reap the rewards next year. So
yeah, it's already coming around. I mean, again, you know, just with the changes that have been made since November for me personally, you know, that stuff, like the mental side of it, the acuity, and you know, I don't know, it's like I'm going to say, and it sounds stupid because I'm like searching for the words right now to describe it, but it's not like the brain fog's gone,
right?
You know, and that's really the best way to describe it. It's like it's not that I was, you know, not clear-headed or anything, but it just, I don't know, it was sluggish.
Yeah.
You know, and now
Lethargic,
that's
yeah.
not there anymore. It's like everything's very easy. It's very decisive. It's very, I mean, today was the first day that I really didn't feel a drive to get out of bed right away. And that was just because I'm like, dude, it's my day off. I'm going to be up all night anyway. Why? What's the rush? I'm not working out today. I'm not doing anything. Let the body recover. So I slept for an extra 2 hours. That's the first time since November that I've done that.
Yeah.
You know, normally I'm trying to get up and run again, and it's not an issue. I get up and do it, and that's what I think is going to translate over to a more fun hunting season, is because all this stuff is like done now, and it's like, all right, cool. Now we're up. It's not like I'm sitting here, alarm goes off at 3:30, and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. And we've all felt that. You know, it goes off and you're just like, man, I am not feeling it today. Well, that was every day.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that way now.
That's good.
So the mental side of it, that's huge. And that translates down to everything else. So, and of course, having the motivation of a 12-pointer that evaded me this year.
That'll help. That'll contribute greatly.
Yeah. And I already called dibs. I told the wife that she's, no. He's mine.
That's mine.
He's mine.
With a bow.
He has earned that. So, yeah. And then the other big issue too is the pigs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have to get the old hog wars going.
I was
again.
gonna say we attempted to start something under the Texas Dirt umbrella on our media platforms with the Hog Wars series, and we might have the means to resurrect that a little bit. So.
Yeah, with the 32 piglets that were under my feeder the other day, yeah, I think it's time.
That'll be big pigs, and that's about the same amount of time you can blink. So, yeah.
There's a lot. I think in total right now, I mean, just those two different locations, which are about 50 feet apart, I had counted upwards of, I think it was like 48, because there were 32 littles in one clump, with a very proud sow standing, like literally looking at the camera. And then at the same time, on the other feeder, there was the other part of the group, and that was all the boars and the juveniles and other sows and stuff like that. So you had the babysitter over here, and then the fun group over here, and they were doing all manner of things over there, which means that the population is going to boom even more in the next probably 3 months. So good times.
Yeah.
So yeah, what you can see and then what you can't see, you can probably add another 50%. So I'm guessing there's probably 70 to 80 pigs running around back there.
There's a ton, I guarantee it. So might need to remedy that problem. So
yeah. Well, they haven't been back since my day is off. You know, I go out there and the wind shifted on my day off and started blowing out of the north, and I'm like, well, there's that.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen them since.
They'll be back.
Oh yeah,
they'll be back. Well, man, thanks for hanging with me for a while and giving us all a big old update on everything you got going on.
Yeah.
And we'll be back for your 9th or 10th or 27th podcast with us eventually. You know, so we'll keep the train rolling. So.
Well, and I'm interested too. I mean, because it was more of a, you know, like the first half of it was more of a personal thing, you know, and it's not something that most people would readily talk about, let alone to a bunch of strangers on a podcast. But
on a hunting
whatever.
podcast, yeah.
I don't even care at this point, because there's so many, like, you know, I go back to the whole PTSD thing. You know, my uncle was in Vietnam and everything. He didn't talk to anybody about it until I came home and I had a CIB, Combat Infantry Badge. I was the first person he talked to about it, and I was like, man, why? You know, so it didn't make sense to me, because he kept all that stuff bottled up, and the things that he told me, I was like, dude, it was nuts, right? Yeah. So the things that he told me were completely insane, and he had never really spoken a word of that to anyone because they didn't get it. And you could see what it did to him. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those guys were like that. And I'm like, nah, that's not, and you still see it with the people that come back from global war and stuff like that. You know, some of the guys are worse off than others, and they won't talk about it. Some do. And I'm like, well, to me, it doesn't make sense to just bottle it in. So, you know, and this is kind of the same vein. So if people ask, I'll tell them. You know, if there's like, so what happened? Or, okay, well, you want the story? I'll tell you the story. I don't care. You know, and it's not like I was anything close to what my uncle was in Vietnam. Right? It was different war, different tactics, different everything. But, you know, if people want to know, I'm not going to sit there and, you know, hold back. I mean, I'll tell them.
Yeah.
Because it helps, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, if it doesn't help me, it might help somebody else. So if there's somebody else out there that hears what I just said about that whole thing, and they're just like, you know what, I'm going to do that too. Sweet.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything. You don't have to make the comment. Don't do anything. You don't, if you don't want to. But if it helps you, great.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going for earlier, just by saying, you know, if there's anybody, hopefully somebody has heard this and it can have a positive impact on them, whatever that might be. And, you know, in conclusion, I'll tag on there that if anybody is tuning in and any piece of what you were saying didn't make sense, or, you know, because we're not doing, you know, any free ads in this podcast, you know, so they're like, oh man, what was the name of the product? You know, if you need to send us a message, you know, to get, so that we can get you in touch with Mike, who can give you more contact info, man, just shoot us a DM.
It's not a secret. I mean, you know, that's the whole thing, is like, people will always ask, like, oh man, what'd you do? What's your secret? And I was like, it's not a secret. You know, and I cannot stand people in, you know, the health industry, you know, and influencers, I'm talking about you, that want to do stuff and then, you know, act like it's a proprietary thing. It's like, you don't own the health industry. This is, it's free knowledge. Yeah. It's always been there. We just forgot how to unlock it. So if you need help unlocking it, I'll give it away. I don't care. You know, I'll tell you what you need to do.
There you go, folks. There you have it. Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. It's always a good time.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Guys, thanks for listening. Be sure you like, subscribe, all the good stuff, and we'll be back with you guys next week for another episode.